Hey friends, I'm Daniel Nesbitt, and we're finally starting a new series. I've been excited about this one for a while. I did want to change things up a little bit, and actually it turns out I'm going to change things up quite a bit. So for this series, before we jump in and I explain what's on my screen right now, I'm going to be doing this in Glyphs Mini. It's going to be mostly the same as what we did in Glyphs, but this is the mini version, and I wanted to feature this a little bit more in depth, unlike the font self and the RoboFont videos that I did not too long ago, because I really like what Glyphs Mini provides. It's just a really good out-of-the-box solution for about $50 US. And so I just wanted to show you what you're capable of doing in there. There are going to be a few things that are different from when we were doing the sans serif in the full version of Glyphs, but it's still a very versatile tool if you're just getting started out, or you're just trying to figure out a few things in type design, or maybe you're just new to playing around in these different apps and you want to give something a shot that isn't too expensive. So with that said, the first thing that I wanted to do was, rather than just going surprise, here's what we're going to be doing for a typeface, I thought I would introduce everybody to TypeCooker. And if you're not familiar, effectively what TypeCooker is just a fun little website that gives you a few different parameters that you can use to do something, either as far as like a type project goes, or a lettering project, or anything else in between. Now what I'm looking at here, there's a few different options that you can go with. There's starter, there's easy, there's class, experienced, and pro. And you'll notice as we go a little bit farther through these that there's more and more options as you get further along on their levels here. For this one, I just wanted to go with the starter because I figured that's pretty safe. It's not too much there, and I think there's enough that we can kind of play around with things a little bit and make some decisions on our own beyond this. What's great about it too is you can refresh it, so if you don't like what you're seeing when you initially land on the page, you can just hit the refresh and change things up a little bit and see what springs to mind here. So I'm going to hit the refresh button a few times because I'm just going to see what stands out to me. So this one here looks interesting to me. This is straight bold, a lot of contrast, a narrow typeface in Roman. So that's one option, but I think we also did a sans serif, I should say, not that long ago. So I'm gonna try a few more here and see what we get. So there's an extended one with serif in bold. And actually that might be kind of fun. Should we do this? Extended Roman with serifs in a bold weight? I think that'd be fun. How about we go with that? So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to my Glyphs here, and let's get started. All right, so I'm in Glyphs Mini, and to get to this point, all I've done is open up the app. There isn't really much else going on here. By default, in the version that I've got, I get A through Z in the capital letters. I get A through Z in the lowercase letters. I get 0 through 9, a period, a comma, a hyphen, and a space. Pretty simple. So there's a few things right off the bat that I'm going to point out in Glyphs Mini that you don't get with the full version of Glyphs. Number one, you don't get the extensions, and I suppose I can't show that very well. Pretty much what you get here is what you see. So, for example, like Speedpunk was one of the extensions that I used in the full version of Glyphs. I'm not going to be able to use that here, so we're going to have to rely on our eyes just a little bit more for the different letters and stuff that we'll be doing there. And if I jump over into the info panel here, this also looks a little bit different as well. And one of the big takeaways here is that you only get one weight and you don't get any instances. So we're not able to interpolate, basically meaning that with instances in Glyphs, the regular version of Glyphs, you could do a very lightweight and a very heavyweight and then interpolate or have the software figure out the weights in between that. Can't do it here. We've got to rely on just one weight, which is totally fine. So to get things set up, we're just going to go ahead and do a few things. So we're going to do an expanded weight, and it's going to be a bold one. The units per M, I'm going to leave at 1,000. So this is just effectively, if you want to think about it in this case as pixels, effectively we're doing a 1000 by 1000 pixel grid here, except it's M's, not pixels. If you do want a higher resolution for your working area, that's where you would grab that and adjust that. And I've seen some people do some really cool things with higher resolution basically M squares, I think is the technical term for it. Going up across the top here, cap height of 700, X height of 500, ascender of 800, descender negative 200. I think I'm debating. I think it might be fun to kind of change these up a little bit, because oftentimes I tend to go with the default values, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but maybe just for giggles, it would be fun to change things up a little bit. So let's see here. For the ascender height, we're going to actually bump that down to 750. For the X height, I tend to usually make higher X heights. And I'm thinking for something that's extended, it might be kind of nice to have that higher X height to help us out a little bit. Now for the descender, that's negative 200. One thing I'm going to try is I just want to see what would happen if we just really minimize the descenders a little bit. I think we could maybe have some fun and unpredictable results there. So that's pretty much everything I'm going to do to set it up. I am going to go back. I should do this as well. Maybe put my name in here so that we've got that. We'll do website too, just to give it a few things here. I could go through and fill the rest out, but I think that's okay. I suppose I could throw a copyright in there as well. Why not? So there we go. We're pretty much all set to go here. So I'm going to jump in and let's start with the capital H. So zooming in a little bit, you can definitely see that the ascender height, really, there isn't a whole lot going on there. The descender height, we've got very, very little there. And that's, of course, by design. It's going to be fun to see where that ends up at. So we did say that we were going to do a pretty bold, extended serif here. So let's just start picking out some options. And what I'm going to do as well is I'm just going to write another H next to this one here so I can kind of use that as a jumping off point. And my first order of business is going to be figuring out how wide that I would like to make this. I'm also going to go through and set up my kerning, my side bearings. I was reading kerning next to it. For now, I'm just going to do 100 on either side. I don't even know if I'm going to stick with that, but we'll see where that takes us. So this is a little bit on the wider side, and I should say too that I'm making my own decision that I think this is probably going to be a display face. I really don't see this being something that's going to get used in body copy, especially for paragraphs of text or anything like that. So yeah, we'll go in, we'll pop in a crossbar there. So we effectively got an H. The other thing that I'm going to do is throw in an N here. The reason that I want to do that is the N has the X height there that I'm after. I'm actually just going to copy that out of there. So, I mean, primarily what I'm debating here is how much of a role that the X height is going to have in some things, because, like, it could be fun to really play with the proportions a little bit, moving this up and down here. I'm just trying to figure out what's going to work. So do 160 for that. I think that'll be fine. So one of the other things too is that it said some contrast, and right now there really isn't any contrast in this. And I think if I did this right here, there should be, well, let's make it official. So I think there's going to be about 10 points of space between the two of these here, so or 10 points difference. So the vertical strokes here are 170 units wide. This one is 160, which isn't really a whole lot at all. So what I'm going to do is maybe bump this from 170 or 160, I should say, to 140. So that does give us a little bit more. Maybe 130. That does start to get a bit contrasty, but actually let's just split the difference. So there we go. We're at 135. I think that'll be okay. And I'm going to get rid of that X height there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a copy of my crossbar there. And let's start figuring out some serifs. So for the serifs, just going to zoom in here a little bit. So if I move that about 80 points out, actually, we'll make it an even 100. And for now, I'm just going to go through, and all I'm worried about too is the outside serifs for now. I'm going to take a look at the other ones in a moment here. If I want to do an inner serif, which I probably would. So doing that also means that I need to move my side bearings out a little bit more still. Oops. So I'll give it another 100 units of space, and that's just so I have enough to work off of there. So what I need to do with this then is to keep some alignment going on here. And making sure that the alignment looks visually correct. So I don't think I'm spot on here. Let's try this one more time. Actually, there we go. So I think what I'm going to do instead is copy and paste that. I'm just going to flip it instead. Maybe this helps me with the results that I want. So just confirming that I've got that. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. I think I was off on the other side here, which is what was throwing me off. So right now, like I said, all I'm doing is worrying about the just kind of blocking the serifs out, I guess is probably the best way to put this. And you can tell I was off, so good thing we redid that. And then I got to make sure that I get my bearings correct here. I think that's it. Looks like it. Perfect. So with that in place, you can start to see this shape up a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bump these serifs out even more. I think it would just be fun to have some really chunky serifs there. So with that, I want to figure out now how I want these to look. Because right now this is pretty slabby, I guess, for lack of better words. And I'm kind of thinking it would be fun just to play with the shape a little bit there. So let's see. So if I go up 50 units, that gives me kind of a nice little wedge shape going on there, which could be kind of fun. That's not too bad. But I think we could have more fun with it still. So I'm actually going to change my mind a little bit here. Let's see what else we can do with the serif. So I'm just going to arbitrarily draw that. Let's give it a width that would divide easily. So if that's 170, let's do 370. So we'll get 100 units on each side. And let's do, let's see, 135. And if you're curious, I am just totally making these numbers up. Let's be real here. So moving my point here, where it's going to be resizing from, I think I'm actually going to give this a little bit more weight. And let's go down to like 100. The other thing I'm going to do is just line these up a little bit as well, so that everything's kind of in line. Perfect. All right, so what else could I do? I could actually move that in 30 units. That could be kind of fun. So let's see what happens if we do that. So I'm going to flip that upside down, and I'm just going to do one side for now, just to get a feel for how this might look. Actually, I think I have to go a little bit thicker. Let's bump that up a little bit more, and maybe with that wedge shape we go out a little bit extra as well, just to give it some space on the inside here. Because the other thing that I'm looking at too is if I zoom out a little bit here, I also want to consider how much of my detail I'm going to lose, because even though this is a display face, there's still that possibility that we might lose some detail as we go here. So just want to make sure that we're good there. I think too, make some visual corrections there on the fly as well. So that's not too bad. The other thing we could play with is I'm going to just take my knife tool here. Once I get it to cooperate, there we go. And that's... Apparently my knife tool is not going to cooperate, so we'll do it this way. The other thing that I was thinking too was if I were to go and kind of create this shape. So it tapers in a little bit more. And that's kind of fun. I mean, I'm bumping around pieces here, just having some fun, just to get a feel for what I might want here. So actually feeling pretty good about this. I'm going to actually go ahead and delete the other side there, and we'll just make a copy of that. And all I'm going to do is just push that over until both my side bearings are at 70. And actually, as I zoom out here a little bit, I think that looks pretty cool. I'm going to beef up my serifs just a little bit more, but I think we're onto something, and I like it. So I'm going to visually center that crossbar a little bit, and I think we're there. I think that actually looks pretty good. Now for the lowercase n, I wouldn't mind taking some inspiration, if you will, from this. So I'm just going to copy these pieces here. We'll paste that over. I'm going to go with 70 again. And much of what you're going to see here is exactly what you would expect for a lowercase n. I am going to go and just adjust some of these pieces a little bit. Now, one thing I am going to do is we need to start making some special pieces here, because we obviously don't want a serif on the wrong side. So I'm going to go and create kind of a shape like that. And then for the curve here, I think we maybe could have some fun with this too. Why not? Maybe we do something a little bit more angular, just to test things out a little bit. And again, I'm just going to keep something to the side here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually just get this all lined up first, and then we'll take a little bit more of a look as to how things are shaping up. Now, one thing I do want to do as well is make my lowercase a little bit thicker before I get too carried away. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to go 5 units that way. We're going to go 5 units that way. Grab this side and that side. So 5 units in those directions as well. Actually, I take that back. Let's not yet. I actually just want to see how this is going to shape up first. So we're kind of getting an angular shape here, which I think is really fun. As I'm just kind of feeling this out a little bit. And let's... I think I went and just messed up my thing there. There we go. So if we pull our points just so they all kind of line up and match up there. There we go. I'm going to keep that point straight as well, and then we're going to, I think, maybe just visually, well, who am I kidding? I don't think I could just be okay with it being in a visual, like visually looking right. I've got to make this technically look right. Otherwise, it's just going to bug me. So there we go. So now I know that this line is parallel with this line, which is all I was after. And since we're in that mode, I'm also just going to go through and check. I think I was actually, wow, spot on with that one. I don't think I've ever had that happen. All right, so that is kind of cool. But I'm wondering if I can get my selection correct here. So what I'm looking at here is if we consider how, and actually one other thing that I need to do as well before I get too far ahead of myself is we need to create an overshoot. So I think I'm going to go with 20 points for an overshoot. So that's just so this angular piece up here looks like it's meeting where we want it to. But I'm wondering if it might help to actually make this a little bit more of a angle there. So I'm just going to kind of keep pushing this around. The other thing that I was getting at was I want this part here where it starts to, I guess, curve down, even though it angles down. I want this to kind of feel like it's all the same weight, which I don't think we weren't there. We'll see if my guess was close. I think I wasn't too far off. No. So we'll get those lined up, and I think that works a little bit better for now. So the other thing that I was thinking too was I've got a downstroke here. I've got a downstroke here. So obviously those are going to be thicker like the H here. But the other thing that I'm looking at is this stroke here, which would go up. So from bottom left, upper right. And I want this to match up with the H. So I am kind of going back and forth on that width, but I think if I get it to something like that, I think that looks fine. So the other thing that I'm going to do then is grab this here. I know I'm going to mess... Actually, here's a trick that I probably should do. So this point here, I'm going to start moving around, and I would mess up this here, which I don't want. If I right-click and do open corner, as I like to call it, we get some pizza in the corner there. So now this line won't be messed up by what I'm about to do with this other line here. The other thing that I'm going to do while I have that kind of in progress there is I'm also going to go through and just keep that line parallel to the line above there. And it may end up being that I taper this in at some point, but for now, as we're just kind of feeling things out, I'm just going to let that fly. So, getting back to what I was after here, I want this to feel the same weight as that. And I don't know that it needs to go too far, but maybe 5 points would do it. And I'm just kind of going off of a visual thing here. I'm not really going too much farther than that. The other thing that I'm going to do is maybe just bump this up a little bit more. The reason for that is it kind of takes some pressure off of these angles here. And maybe something like that. So I think that kind of looks pretty cool. It's a little bit edgy, which I kind of like, not gonna lie. Since this is display, I'm actually going to bump in my side bearings as well. Because effectively, I've got some negative space here that I kind of want to match up in between. The other thing I can do too, just like Glyphs, the full version of Glyphs, is I can adjust this down here. Now, I don't believe I get the blurry tool thing. I just get the colors here to flip back and forth, which is fine, I think. But yeah, I think this is kind of it's different. It's fun. It's I think it's working. So, like I mentioned in some other videos, one of the first things that we want to do is we want to start creating some words. So to wrap this up, at least for this first episode, I'm going to go through and I'm just going to make the word hill for now. And we'll just kind of use this as our starting point. Actually, what I'm going to do for the L, oops, just give me a clean slate there. There we go. So I'm just going to use the entire H as my starting point and get all these pieces lined up. And then I'm just going to use the width of my strokes there. I'm not going to go off the widths of my serifs. So we'll delete the pieces we don't need. And let's go ahead and rotate this 90 degrees. I think my plan of attack, just to give me a place to start here, is I'm going to center this piece right in the middle of the stroke there, which I think is fine. Move that there, that there. So there we go. And so that gives me an L. You probably can see where I'm going here. We're going to refresh my metrics. Oops. Going to refresh my metrics there. And we're just going to finish typing out the word hill. Already I can tell my L is a bit too wide, so truth be told, I'm just going to eyeball it. Update the metrics once more just so everybody gets nice and tidy there. And there we go. Already off and running. I think that's going to work out pretty well. I think we're in a good place here. The one thing that I was wondering, if you did notice the hesitation in my voice, I don't know if adding an angle like that... I'm going to change my mind. We're going to leave that at a 90-degree angle because why not? So with that, I think this is kind of a fun place to leave this first episode. Primarily, it's just a matter of getting our control characters. We will have to address both the O's as well in the upper and lower case, so we can kind of round those out and start getting into spacing. But at the very least, we've got an H, an I, and an L, and a lowercase n, so we're already off, I think, to a pretty good start. And it's been kind of fun just to take TypeCooker and to try something a little bit different, a little bit off the beaten path of what I would normally do. So hopefully you enjoy this, and by all means, if you manage to grab a copy of Glyphs, you want to join in on the fun, like I said, I will leave a link to TypeCooker in the links below. But I think this is it's just something fun to do, especially if you get a little bit of free time. And yeah, Glyphs Mini is actually a really fun tool to work with. It doesn't have all of the bells and whistles, of course, that some of the other apps do, like the full version of Glyphs or RoboFont or anything like that. But what I'm hoping to accomplish here is to show you that you don't necessarily need all of those options. They're nice to have, of course, and if you're getting into technical things with your typeface design, of course, stuff like that at your disposal is great, but you can still have fun with something like this. So, as always, thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. It always helps to get these videos out further and further for those who are definitely getting interested in type design, or maybe they're just trying to find what's out there on YouTube for type design resources, so that definitely helps. And as always, if you have any comments, suggestions, ideas, or if you want to shout out what you're doing, the comment section is always open. You've all been amazing over the last few weeks, commenting on a number of my videos and the live streams as well that I started doing. It's been really fun interacting with everybody. So with that said, hope to see you in the comments section. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode.